The skies above Titan. The serene expanse of Saturn's rings cast a soft glow through the observation windows of the hospital ship Hippocrates. As it orbited Titan, the vessel was a hub of peace and medical innovation, a floating sanctuary where beings from various human and alien civilizations came for healing. Dr. Elijah Reed, adjusting the settings on his medical scanner, chatted amiably with his colleague, Dr. Marcus Ewan, while they monitored their patient's recovery from complex surgery. "You know, Marcus, every time I look out and see Saturn, it reminds me how small our squabbles back on Earth are," Elijah remarked, gazing out the window briefly before checking the vitals on the screen. Marcus laughed, handing Elijah a data pad with the patient's latest test results. "And yet we bring our earthly habits all the way out here. Have you seen the latest supply requests? More synthetic plasma, as always." Their light-hearted banter was cut abruptly as the ship trembled violently, alarms blaring through the corridor. Instantly, both doctors snapped into crisis mode, securing medical equipment and stabilizing their patient. "What in the cosmos was that?" Marcus exclaimed, looking towards Elijah with wide eyes. "Stay with the patient." "I'll check the bridge," Elijah replied, his voice calm but firm. He dashed out of the medical bay, his boots thudding against the metal floor as he ran. Arriving at the bridge, Elijah found chaos. Crew members were scrambling to their stations, assessing damage and responding to emergency protocols. The captain, a stern human named Laura Phelps, was coordinating efforts with intense focus. "Dr. Reed, we've been attacked. Unknown assailants. They hit our engines and medical supply storage," Captain Phelps reported without taking her eyes off the holographic displays showing the ship's status. "Casualties?" Elijah asked, his heart sinking. "Initial reports indicate several wounded. We need all hands on deck in the medical bay," she replied. Elijah nodded and raced back, his mind racing with the implications of the attack. Returning to the medical bay, he found Marcus organizing a triage area. "We've got incoming, Elijah." "I need you here," Marcus called out, already assisting a wounded crew member. Together they worked seamlessly, their training taking over as they stabilized new patients. Amid the chaos, Elijah couldn't help but think of the repercussions of this attack. A hospital ship, neutral by all space accords, targeted and damaged, could only escalate tensions. As they worked, Elijah and Marcus shared a quick exchange, their professional bond evident. "We need to keep everyone stable until we can get to a port or until help arrives," Marcus stated, handing Elijah a medical laser. "We will," Elijah affirmed, turning to another patient. "We always do." Through the viewport, the stars watched silently, indifferent to the struggles within the ship. But for Elijah and the crew of the Hippocrates, each life saved was a quiet victory in the vastness of space, each moment of care a testament to their dedication, despite the looming threat that had just entered their lives. Chapter 2. First Contact. The conference room aboard the United Earth Space Command was thick with tension as representatives from various human and allied alien governments gathered. The mood was somber. The attack on the Hippocrates had left everyone shaken but determined to find a peaceful resolution. Admiral Jackson Hart, overseeing the assembly, opened the discussion. "We have all seen the footage. The Hippocrates, a designated hospital ship, was targeted without provocation. Our priority must be to identify the aggressors and engage diplomatically." Elijah, standing beside a large digital map displaying the last known coordinates of the attackers, added, "We must consider that this might have been a misunderstanding or a rogue faction. The Klaxi have been near that sector, but they've been peaceful for decades." Dr. Simon Torres, an expert in interstellar diplomacy, nodded in agreement. "I suggest we send an envoy to the Klaxi. Communication could preempt any further escalation." "Agreed," Hart responded. "Dr. Reed, Given your experience and your presence during the attack, you're on the envoy team. We need someone who's seen the consequences firsthand. Elijah accepted the responsibility, though the weight of the task was daunting. We'll need a comprehensive strategy. Marcus, I'd like you to join as medical liaison. We might uncover more about their motives if we understand their casualties. Marcus, who had just entered the room with updated casualty reports, looked up, surprised but resolute. Of course, Elijah. Whatever it takes to prevent this from happening again. Later, as the envoy team prepared aboard their diplomatic vessel, Elijah and Marcus reviewed the Claxey's cultural and political structures with Sarah Jensen, a cultural anthropologist. Remember, the Claxey communicate primarily through subsonic vibrations, Sarah explained, handing them translation devices. It's not just about what you say, but how you say it. Tone, inflection, even body posture can convey different meanings. Sounds like we'll need to tread carefully, Marcus remarked, adjusting his translator. We don't want to accidentally declare war because I stood the wrong way. Elijah chuckled, appreciating the momentary levity. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. Our goal is to open a dialogue, find out why they attacked, and hopefully bring back some answers. As the ship approached the Claxey homeworld, a shimmering blue planet adorned with swirling white clouds, the crew readied themselves for what might be a historic meeting. Upon landing, they were greeted by a delegation of Claxey, towering insectoid creatures with iridescent wings and multiple-faceted eyes that glinted in the sunlight. The head of the delegation, a Claxey named Sarena, stepped forward. His voice, a deep rumble, was translated smoothly. "Welcome, humans. We are prepared to discuss the unfortunate events that have led to your presence here." Elijah, extending a hand in a universal gesture of peace, responded, "Thank you, Sarena. We come with a desire to understand and to discuss how we might avoid further conflict." The Claxey seemed to appreciate the gesture, their antennae twitching slightly, a sign Sarah had briefed them meant curiosity and openness. As they walked towards the meeting hall, a grand structure reminiscent of a hive, Elijah felt the gravity of their mission. This was about more than just diplomacy. It was about bridging worlds, understanding differences, and finding a path to coexistence. Chapter 3. Into the Fray. The diplomatic vessel's common room buzzed with activity as the envoy team gathered around a sleek holographic table. Maps of the Claxey homeworld rotated slowly above the surface, pinpointing key locations and demographic data. Elijah, Marcus, and a newly introduced team member, Lieutenant Craig Anderson, were deep in discussion about their approach strategy. "We should start with the main governance cluster," Craig suggested, pointing at a glowing area on the map. "It's where the decision-makers are, and showing our willingness to engage directly might help ease tensions." Marcus nodded, looking over the medical data he had compiled. The Claxey also respect expertise and technical skills. If we can demonstrate our medical advancements, it might serve as a goodwill gesture. Elijah considered this. "Good points, both. We'll split our time between the governance discussions and a demonstration at their main medical facility. Craig, you'll lead the security detail for the visit. We can't afford any surprises." As preparations continued, the team practiced communication techniques with Sarah Jensen's guidance. "Remember, the Claxey value clarity and directness," she instructed. "Ambiguity in our intentions could be misinterpreted as deception." The following morning, the team disembarked in a bustling city center, where the architecture was a stark contrast to human designs, featuring organic curves and structures that seemed to grow out of the ground itself. The air was filled with a chorus of subsonic hums and the hustle of daily life. They were escorted to the governance cluster by Sarena and his aides. The building was impressive, constructed from a translucent material that shimmered in the sunlight, reflecting the city's vibrant life. Inside, they were brought before a council of Klaxi leaders. Elijah stepped forward, extending greetings in their language, facilitated by the translator device. "We are here to understand and to find a path to mutual respect and collaboration." A Klaxi elder responded, his voice a low thrum that vibrated through the room. "We acknowledge your journey here and are prepared to listen. But know that our actions are always in defense of our sovereignty." Elijah nodded, acknowledging the elder's concern. "We respect your sovereignty and seek only to understand the reasons behind the attack on the Hippocrates to ensure such incidents can be avoided in the future." The discussions that followed were intense but respectful. Elijah and Marcus took turns presenting their points, explaining the humanitarian mission of the Hippocrates and detailing the casualties and damage. They listened carefully as the Klaxi explained a recent series of border violations they had perceived as aggressive acts, mistakenly attributed to human ships. "Understanding comes from dialogue," Marcus interjected, presenting data from other medical missions that had benefited both human and alien communities. "Perhaps there is more we can do to prevent misunderstandings in the future." The elder seemed to consider this, his antennae twitching thoughtfully. "Perhaps. We are not without empathy. We understand the sanctity of life, as you do." As the meeting adjourned, Sarena approached Elijah and Marcus. "Your words have been heard, and they carry weight. Come, let us show you our city. Share our culture. It is only through knowing each other that we truly see each other." As they walked through the city, Elijah felt a cautious optimism. The day had been long and filled with difficult conversations, but it ended with an invitation to learn and share. The path to understanding was complex, but for the first time it seemed tangible. Chapter 4. A Delicate Dance. The morning light spilled over the Klaxi capital, casting long shadows between the towering structures that seemed as much grown as built. Elijah, Marcus, and Craig strolled through the bustling market district alongside Sarena, who appeared keen to expose the humans to Klaxi culture. "Each of these stalls tells a part of our history," Sarena explained, guiding them to a vendor displaying vibrant fabrics. "These patterns represent different epochs in our civilization's history." Craig, ever the security officer, kept a close eye on their surroundings, but his interest was piqued by the intricate designs. "It's fascinating how art and history intertwine so visibly in your culture." Marcus, meanwhile, was drawn to a stall with an array of exotic fruits. "Do these have medicinal properties?" he asked, curious. Sarena hummed, a sound of affirmation. "Many do. Perhaps tomorrow we could arrange a visit to our botanical gardens. You'll find our pharmacological applications quite enlightening." As the day progressed, they visited several cultural sites, including a museum dedicated to Klaxi aerospace technology. Elijah was impressed by the sophisticated designs and the evident pride the Klaxi took in their technological achievements. At a nearby cafe, the group sat down to discuss the day's experiences. Over cups of a steaming local beverage, Elijah broached a more delicate subject. "Sarena, today has been incredible, and we're grateful for your hospitality. I can't help but wonder, though, how can we use what we've learned today to prevent future misunderstandings?" Sarena sipped his drink before replying. "Understanding each other's culture is a start. Many conflicts are rooted in misinterpretations and misplaced fears. We, too, have been guilty of this." Marcus chimed in, his tone earnest. "Perhaps joint cultural exchanges could be a start. If more of our people experienced what we have today, it might foster a deeper mutual respect." Craig nodded in agreement. "And regular diplomatic communications, maybe even a liaison office on each other's worlds. It's harder to misunderstand those you work alongside day by day." Sarena considered their suggestions, his gaze thoughtful. "These are good ideas. I believe our council would be open to such initiatives. It shows a commitment not just to peace, but to a partnership. Feeling encouraged by Serena's response, Elijah leaned forward. We're committed to more than just avoiding conflict. We want a partnership that can enrich both our peoples, whether through trade, technology, or cultural sharing. As the meeting concluded, Serena invited the team to a concert featuring traditional Klaxi music that evening. Music, he said, transcends language. It speaks to the soul. Join us tonight, and let us continue our dialogue not just through words, but through the universal language of music. That evening, under the soft glow of the Klaxi's twin moons, the human delegates experienced the haunting melodies of Klaxi instruments. The concert provided a backdrop for informal discussions with various Klaxi officials who were in attendance. Elijah, taking in the peaceful scene, felt a surge of optimism about the days ahead. Tomorrow would bring its challenges, but today had shown him that peace was possible when both sides were willing to listen and learn from each other. As the music filled the air, it seemed to weave a subtle bond between them, hinting at a future filled with potential. Chapter 5. Common Ground. The Klaxi botanical gardens were a labyrinth of vibrant flora, their colors a vivid palette against the soft sky of the alien world. Elijah, Marcus, and Craig followed Serena along the winding paths, each turn offering a new visual and olfactory delight. This plant, Serena pointed to a towering fern-like species with luminescent tips, is crucial to our ecosystem. It purifies the air and water and serves as a base ingredient in many of our medicines. Marcus, taking notes on a digital pad, was fascinated. There's potential for biotechnological collaboration here. Our pharmaceutical industries would be very interested in this. Elijah watched as Craig engaged with Serena, asking questions about the garden's security measures, a topic that seemed to fascinate the Klaxi as well. Our security is less about intrusion prevention and more about maintaining ecological balance, Serena explained. The discussion turned to the mechanics of Klaxi governance as they walked. Our leaders are chosen through a meritocratic system, based on their contributions to society, Serena shared, leading them to a shaded sitting area. Craig seemed thoughtful. Meritocracy? That's a concept we understand, though our systems probably differ significantly in execution. As they sat, a group of Klaxi children nearby played a game that involved intricate patterns of movement and sound. Elijah, intrigued, asked Serena about it. It's a form of educational play. They learn about our history and culture through rhythms and dances. Marcus smiled, watching the children. We have something similar. Games that teach history or math through stories and puzzles. Serena nodded. It is the same principle then. Education shapes the young to inherit a world we make, or mend. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a local artist carrying a portfolio. With Serena's introduction, the artist unfolded several pieces of artwork that depicted various historical and mythological scenes of Klaxi culture. Elijah was drawn to a painting showing a peaceful gathering of different species on a similar garden setting. This is beautiful. Does this scene represent a specific event? It symbolizes the Great Accord, a historic peace made between different factions on our world, the artist explained. I hope to see a new accord soon, perhaps even between our peoples. Feeling a connection with the artist's sentiment, Elijah replied, That's our hope too. Perhaps this meeting, this dialogue we're having, is the start of that new accord. The artist beamed, pleased with his understanding. May it be so. I would like to gift you this painting, to remember this day and our conversation. Elijah accepted the gift graciously, touched by the gesture. As the afternoon waned, the group made their way back to the diplomatic quarters, their minds full of new ideas and a deeper appreciation of the Klaxi way of life. Back at their accommodations, Elijah, Marcus, and Craig debriefed, discussing the day's revelations and planning their next steps. Today was about more than just learning. It was about connecting, Elijah noted. Each conversation, each shared moment has brought us closer to understanding each other. Marcus agreed. And every piece of knowledge we gain is a step towards building a lasting peace. Craig, always cautious, added, "Let's make sure we keep this momentum going. Tomorrow's discussions at the council will be crucial." As they retired for the evening, Elijah looked at the painting, now hanging in their common room. The peaceful gathering it depicted seemed more attainable than ever, and he felt a quiet confidence that they were on the right path. Chapter 6. The Gesture of Peace. The Grand Council chamber of the Klaxi capital was abuzz with activity. The chamber was circular, with tiered seating rising towards a domed ceiling that shimmered with holographic displays of stars and galaxies. At the center, the Klaxi Council awaited the human delegation's presentation, their multifaceted eyes reflecting the ambient light. Elijah, Marcus, and Craig stood together at a podium-like structure that adjusted to accommodate human stature. Sarena had briefed them earlier, emphasizing clarity and sincerity in their communication. "Let's stay focused," Marcus whispered to Elijah as they prepared. "They're watching everything, not just what we say but how we say it." "I know," Elijah replied, adjusting his stance. "Craig, keep an eye on the delegates' reactions. We need to read the room as much as they're reading us." The elder Klaxi, presiding over the session, raised a clawed hand, signaling for silence. The human delegation has requested this audience to present their perspective. We now grant them the floor. Elijah stepped forward, taking a measured breath. "Honored members of the Klaxi Council, we come before you with a singular purpose: to understand one another better and to ensure that the tragic incident involving the Hippocrates is never repeated." He gestured towards a holographic display, which Marcus activated. It showed footage of the Hippocrates' medical missions, treating patients from a dozen different species. The Hippocrates is a hospital ship, unarmed and dedicated solely to the preservation of life. Its presence in your sector was part of a humanitarian mission. Marcus took over, pointing to charts detailing the ship's routes and objectives. "Our goal was to provide medical aid to any who needed it, without regard to species or political alignment. The attack cost lives, including Klaxi workers who were on board as part of our collaborative efforts." The council members exchanged glances, their antennae twitching in subtle communication. One of them, a younger Klaxi with a vibrant carapace, spoke up. "You claim no hostile intent, yet your vessels encroach upon our territories. How do you reconcile this with your stated purpose?" Craig stepped in, his voice steady. "We acknowledge that misunderstandings have occurred, but we hope to address them through dialogue and mutual agreements. We're here to propose clearer boundaries and shared communication protocols to avoid such incidents in the future." Elijah added, "Additionally, we propose an exchange program. Scientists, diplomats, and even medical personnel from both our peoples working together. Such collaboration can build trust and prevent misinterpretations." Sarena, standing beside the council members, turned to his colleagues. "The humans have shown a willingness to adapt and learn from our concerns. Their proposal warrants consideration." The elder Klaxi nodded. "Their words are measured, but actions must follow. What guarantees do we have that such agreements will be honored?" Elijah, sensing the weight of the moment, stepped forward. "Allow us to demonstrate our commitment. Let us begin with a joint medical project here on your world, with Klaxi and human experts working side by side. We'll share knowledge, resources, and results." Marcus quickly chimed in. "We can start with your botanical gardens. Your plant-based medicines are extraordinary, and our technology could enhance their applications. It would benefit both our peoples." The chamber fell silent as the council deliberated. The Klaxi spoke in low, resonant tones that the translator struggled to keep up with. Finally, the elder raised his clawed hand again. "Your proposal will be considered. For now, we invite you to our research facilities to initiate these projects. This will be a test of your sincerity." As the council session concluded, Sarena escorted the human team out. "You handled yourselves well. The council's agreement to even consider your proposal is significant." "Thanks, but it's just the first step," Elijah replied. "The real work starts now." That evening, the team visited one of the Klaxi research facilities, a sprawling complex that blended seamlessly with a natural environment. Scientists from both species began exchanging ideas almost immediately, their enthusiasm bridging the gap that politics often widened. Marcus, examining a Klaxi device used for extracting medicinal compounds, marveled at its simplicity and efficiency. "We could learn so much from this. Their approach is elegant." Elijah, speaking with a group of Klaxi botanists, felt a growing sense of mutual curiosity. "This plant's properties are incredible. With our imaging technology, we could identify even more active compounds." Craig, watching from a distance, leaned towards Sarena. "They're getting along better than I expected." Sarena's mandibles curved slightly in what Elijah had learned to interpret as a smile. When knowledge is the common language, understanding follows. As the night wore on, the initial tension that had marked their arrival gave way to a quiet camaraderie. The team returned to their quarters tired but energized by the progress they'd made. In their shared common room, Elijah and Marcus reviewed the day's events. "We're on the right track," Marcus said, closing his data pad. "But we need to stay consistent. Trust isn't built overnight." Craig, leaning against the doorway, added, "Agreed. Let's not lose sight of the bigger picture." Elijah nodded, feeling the weight of their responsibility. "Tomorrow, we continue. One step at a time." The room fell into a comfortable silence as they each contemplated the path ahead. Outside, the Klaxi's twin moons illuminated the research complex, a quiet reminder of the work still to come. Chapter 7. Under Starlit Skies. The soft hum of Klaxi music drifted through the evening air, blending with the faint rustle of the planet's nocturnal life. Elijah, Marcus, and Craig were seated at a long table in a quiet garden near the research facility, sharing a meal with Sarena and several other Klaxi officials. The event was informal, a chance to foster relationships outside the rigid structure of council meetings. Elijah leaned back in his chair, sipping a beverage made from a local fruit. Its flavor was tart but refreshing, a pleasant contrast to the intense days of negotiations. "This is remarkable," he said, addressing Sarena. "You've managed to combine function and beauty in your architecture and environment. It feels harmonious." Sarena, seated across from him, tilted his head slightly, his antennae twitching. "Harmony is an important principle for us. Balance between nature, technology, and community ensures our survival and growth." Marcus, setting down his own glass, nodded. "I noticed that in your research facility, the way it integrates with the surrounding environment, it's like it belongs there. Back home, we tend to build over nature rather than with it." One of the Klaxi scientists, a younger individual named Takal, spoke up. "Your technologies are impressive, though. The imaging equipment you demonstrated today, such precision. It's something we could learn from." Craig, ever the pragmatist, leaned forward. "And we could learn from your energy systems. That self-sustaining model you use for your cities? If we applied that back on Earth, it would revolutionize how we handle urban development." The discussion flowed easily, moving from technical subjects to cultural traditions. Sarena explained the significance of the music playing in the background. It's an ancient composition, used to celebrate unity after conflicts between our clans were resolved. Elijah, intrigued, asked, "Do you think it could symbolize unity between our peoples one day?" Sarena regarded him thoughtfully. "Perhaps. Music, like diplomacy, requires both sides to listen as much as they create. Tonight, we listen. Tomorrow, we create." After the meal, the group moved to a nearby observation platform that overlooked a vast field of bioluminescent plants. The glowing flora created a mesmerizing display, shifting colors in slow, rhythmic waves. Elijah stood at the edge of the platform, taking it all in. Marcus joined him, hands in his pockets. "It's hard to believe we were on the brink of conflict just days ago," Marcus said quietly. "Now it feels like there's a real chance to build something better." Elijah nodded, his gaze fixed on the glowing field. "It's fragile, though. One wrong step, one misunderstanding, and we could lose it all. That's why we need to stay vigilant." Behind them, Craig was speaking with Takal and another Klaxi scientist, exchanging ideas about security systems and resource management. Despite his usual caution, he seemed genuinely engaged, even cracking a rare smile. Sarena approached Elijah and Marcus, his movements deliberate and graceful. "You see now what we strive to protect," he said, gesturing towards the field. "This is not just a place but a legacy, a reflection of our efforts to preserve what matters most." Elijah turned to face him. "It's beautiful, and it reminds me of what we're trying to achieve. A balance, like you said, between progress and preservation, between different ways of thinking." Sarena's antennae twitched in what Elijah had come to recognize as approval. "You understand more than most. Perhaps that is why you were chosen to lead this delegation." As the evening wore on, the group grew quieter, the weight of their shared experiences settling over them. Marcus eventually broke the silence. "We should probably head back. Tomorrow's going to be another long day." Elijah agreed, but as they turned to leave, Sarena stopped him. "Stay a moment, Elijah. There is something I wish to discuss with you privately." Marcus and Craig exchanged glances but didn't object, leaving Elijah alone with the Klaxi diplomat. Sarena led him to a smaller, more secluded part of the garden, where the bioluminescent plants cast a softer, more intimate glow. "I wanted to thank you," Sarena began, his voice low. "Not just for your efforts, but for your willingness to see us as more than adversaries." Elijah met his gaze, surprised by the candidness. "It's the only way forward. If we don't try to understand each other, what's the alternative? Endless conflict? I refuse to believe that's all we're capable of." Sarena's mandibles curved slightly, a gesture Elijah had learned to interpret as a smile. "That belief is rare, even among my own people. It gives me hope that this alliance we're building might endure." They stood in silence for a moment, the glow of the plants reflecting off their faces. Elijah felt the weight of the day lifting, replaced by a quiet determination to see this mission through. As they returned to the observation platform, the others were waiting. Craig raised an eyebrow at Elijah, but said nothing, while Marcus gave him a small nod of encouragement. Together, the human delegation and their Klaxi counterparts walked back to their quarters under the twin moons, the night sky a silent witness to their growing partnership. In the quiet moments before sleep, Elijah reflected on Sarena's words and the challenges ahead. The road was still uncertain, but for the first time, it felt like they were walking it together. Chapter 8. A New Dawn. The Grand Hall of the United Earth Space Command buzzed with quiet anticipation. Delegates from dozens of species, including the Klaxi, gathered in the circular chamber to witness the signing of an unprecedented treaty. At the center of the room, two long tables faced each other, each bearing the insignias of Earth and the Claxi. Elijah adjusted his collar, glancing at Marcus and Craig. Both men were similarly dressed in formal diplomatic attire, their usual ease replaced by the weight of the moment. Sarena stood nearby, his carapace polished to a shimmering brilliance, an unspoken gesture of respect for the occasion. "Ready?" Marcus asked, his tone more reassuring than questioning. Elijah nodded, exhaling deeply. "As ready as we'll ever be." Craig, ever the pragmatist, added, "Let's just stick to the plan. This is too important to mess up." The room quieted as the elder Claxi, flanked by a contingent of advisers, stepped forward to address the assembly. His voice resonated through the chamber, amplified by the translation devices. "This gathering marks a turning point for both our peoples. We have moved from misunderstanding to dialogue, from suspicion to cooperation. Today, we solidify a new path forward." Elijah exchanged a brief look with Sarena before stepping up to speak on behalf of Earth. "Honored delegates, today we commit to a partnership that transcends the boundaries of our worlds. Together, we've faced challenges, learned from each other, and built something that has the potential to endure." The two leaders moved to the tables, each taking a ceremonial pen. As they signed the treaty, the room erupted in a low hum of approval from the assembled crowd. The agreement, years in the making, was now official. After the ceremony, Elijah, Marcus, Craig, and Sarena found themselves in a private lounge, sharing a rare moment of calm. A holographic display on one wall showed a live feed of the celebration outside, a blend of human and Claxi music and dance filling the plaza. Marcus poured himself a drink, raising his glass. "To collaboration, and to the fact that we didn't screw it up." Craig smirked. "Yet, let's not get ahead of ourselves." Elijah laughed, the tension of the day easing slightly. "I'll drink to that." Sarena observed the camaraderie, his antennae twitching in subtle amusement. "Your ability to find humor in moments of great significance is unique. Perhaps it is one of your strengths." "It keeps us grounded," Marcus replied, "and reminds us why we're doing this." The conversation turned to the next steps in their partnership. Joint research projects, cultural exchanges, and trade agreements were already in motion, but Sarena emphasized the importance of sustaining the personal relationships they'd built. "Trust is not maintained by treaties alone," Sarena said. "It requires continuous effort, particularly between individuals." Craig, leaning back in his chair, nodded. "That's true. Protocols and policies can only do so much. It's the people on the ground who make or break these kinds of alliances." The group's dynamic shifted as the evening wore on, the formality giving way to a more relaxed atmosphere. Marcus shared stories from his time in medical school, and Sarena recounted tales of his own youth, surprising them with a sense of humor that seemed unusual for a Claxi. Elijah, watching the interplay between his friends and their Claxi counterpart, felt a quiet pride in what they had accomplished together. It wasn't just the treaty, it was the relationships they'd forged, the understanding they'd cultivated despite their differences. As the night deepened, Sarena turned to Elijah. "You have been the heart of this mission, Dr. Reed. Without your patience and willingness to listen, I doubt we would be here." Elijah shook his head. "It wasn't just me. This was a team effort, and everyone played a part. Besides, you've taught me just as much, if not more." Sarena regarded him with an expression that Elijah had learned to interpret as reflective. "Perhaps that is why this partnership will succeed. Neither side seeks to dominate, only to learn." When the celebration finally wound down, the group stepped out onto a balcony overlooking the city. The lights below were a mixture of human and Claxi designs, a symbolic merging of their cultures. Marcus broke the silence. "It's a good start." Craig, standing beside him, nodded. "Yeah. But it's only the start." Elijah, standing with Sarena at the edge of the balcony, let the cool night air wash over him. "A start is all we need. The rest is up to us." Sarena extended a clawed hand, a gesture of solidarity. Elijah took it, their handshake a simple but profound acknowledgment of what they had built together. As the first rays of dawn illuminated the horizon, the group stood in quiet contemplation. The challenges ahead were many, but for the first time they faced them not as adversaries, but as partners. Together, they had proven that understanding was not just possible, it was essential.